Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break. Becky, Warren, thank you for that exceptional interview. Appreciate that. Katie and Adam, great to have you on stage. I would note both the videos were extremely well done in that it gives us a great understanding of your businesses, but also you as leaders. And I'm just going to start with a question for each of you, and then we'll go to back to the question and answer. I think, Katie, well, I know you did. You heard me speaking earlier. I talked to our owners and shareholders around our operating performance and where we are. Highlighted we were in 5th of 6th last year. We've now moved to 4th, and we need to see. And we also talked about needing significant improvement, a step change. But the one thing I didn't really touch on is I started talking about the getting to that next level. But as you touched on, you have 35,000 employees, and to move the organization to look externally and recognize where do we go. How do you take on that challenge?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak today and talk about our great company. It's a pleasure to do that, Greg, so thank you. You know, we absolutely recognize that it's important for us to run an efficient operation, to have a competitive cost structure, and to continue to further close the gap between us and our competitors. You know, we have an exceptional leadership team in place that understands the importance of aligning the entire organization, as you said, Greg, the 35,000 men and women of BNSF, aligning them around that operational excellence. You saw that we made progress, as Greg said, in 2025. We continued to make progress in the first quarter of 2026, but we know that we have more work to be done to drive that operational excellence across all areas of our company.
Thank you, Katie. And then Adam, when I was discussing your new role, and thank you for taking on that role, and as you and also retaining your role at NetJets as the CEO there. So a lot on your plate, and all of us here appreciate that. But it's early going. You've been in the role since December as the president of consumer products and then service and retailing. What are your observations as your early observations across the 32 companies, and how are you approaching that?
Yeah, and talking to the different CEOs, if you give me just 1 second before I answer, I just want to make just one brief comment, really to both Warren and Greg. I have been CEO of NetJets for the last 10 years, but I've been with NetJets. This is my 30th year there. So only at Berkshire could you feel like the new kid on the block after being here for 30 years. But, you know, Warren has taught us a lot. Charlie's taught us a lot. Greg's taught me a lot. One of the things that they've said over and over is that, hey, bad news takes the elevator and good news takes the stairs. And I really understood that many years ago. And until I became CEO, I found myself on the elevator a few times. And what they never told me was what happens after you get on that elevator. And I just want to point out, as the CEO for the last 10 years, there's been many times I've had to make calls on things. We run a big business, and I simply want to say that what happens after that is you have the most unconditional support. And I echo all the CEOs that are in this portfolio. So I just want to say thank you for that, because it's not easy delivering sometimes good or bad news, but it's been phenomenal support. As it relates to the other 31 CEOs in our bucket, I have to sort of start with conversation with NetJets, because people have been asking me a lot in the last 5 months. So you're still CEO of NetJets, but how are you going to take on this other role? And I think the journey starts with the team at NetJets. So many of them are here, and they're incredible. I spend a lot of time over the last 10 plus years with them. I sat up in that stage in the arena in May of 2010, and it was a hard thing to hear, but it was the truth. And Warren talked about NetJets, and stated that it was his toughest mistake that year, and but for the backing of Berkshire, that we would have been bankrupt. And I don't like repeating those words and probably shouldn't do it in front of an entire room, but it's an important pause because then you have two choices. What are you going to go do? And so the team that's sitting with me today and many people back home, I do think we have a wonderful company, as Warren talked about with Charlie in 2023. And I just want to say to them, thank you, because it's been a rough road to do that. And we've accomplished a lot, which gets me in to answer your question. And I'll be honest with you. So thank God I have NetJets because I was able to fly around and see a lot of these companies. Unfortunately, all 31 companies are not based out of Columbus, Ohio, so I've been on our airplanes a lot. And if I'm honest, I was a little concerned about it. Many of the CEOs had reported directly to Warren. All of them reported to Berkshire, and then here comes this guy, that they're now going to be working with. And I will tell you, one of the things that struck me is how wise the CEOs are. They have the energy, intelligence, integrity that Warren always talks about. But I say wise because my concerns were quickly allayed when I started talking to them, in the sense that they've been listening. I know many in this room don't know the names of those 31 other CEOs, but they know you and they've been listening. They absolutely understand the playbook that is the ownership manual. By the way, this is almost today, the 30th anniversary. Warren wrote the owner's manual, and in that was sort of our business Bible on what we needed to do. And I was really pleased. Every one of our CEOs understands that. They've been living that, and that's going to make the interaction much easier for me. So I feel really good. I feel really good about the form of the CEOs that we have, and I know that they have ingrained in them the culture. Part of the culture certainly is the ownership thinking, but the stewardship that is talked about, we feel a massive and deep responsibility to carry on the stewardship and the legacy of Charlie and Warren and work really hard for Greg and his team. So I feel good about it.
Great. Well, we're very fortunate to have Katie and Adam in these leadership roles. Again, it was very purposeful to have them on stage. We want them to have the opportunity to engage with our owners, our shareholders, and we really do look forward to the questions. So thank you for joining us on stage again. Yeah, thank you. Becky, again, great to have you back. Thank you for that interview. And if you'd like to start, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Greg. This question comes from Chris Freed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who wants to know, how has the current geopolitical situation in the Middle East impacted Berkshire's subsidiaries?
Sure. I'll touch on it, and then I'll make sure, because it impacts really, in a variety of ways, all our businesses. But what I'm most proud of our businesses, we operate these businesses for the long run, just like we do obviously for our shareholders. We take a long-term approach. There's not many days, and I used to joke when I more had Adam's role, there wasn't a day I woke up where the phone wasn't ringing with good news. That phone rang. You knew you're going to have a bit of a challenge, and we have that portfolio, but that's okay. We'd be talking, and we always worked our way through it. And we have a team that would lean in, and we'd come through, and it could be anything. And we never tried to use that as a reason we couldn't do something or get to the right place. And what I've seen associated with obviously the war in Iran and the various conflicts in the Middle East is, again, a team that is very much taking the approach that that's the situation we're in. We can manage our business, and we very much quickly move to what's the best solution for our customers? How can we deliver and continue to deliver what we've done to them, and what's their expectations around that? And our teams will work incredibly hard to come up with solutions. I touched on LSPI, the drag reduction agent on the pipeline company. They don't usually sell a lot of product into the Middle East as far as moving. It's more a domestic-based product for Canada and the U.S. when you think of a drag reduction agent on pipelines. Literally being cargo planes of that chemical being moved in the Middle East to help free up supply and i.e. remove that some of that constraint. So there's so many things that go on when they start trying to figure out how to solve the challenge. Now, what I would say is it doesn't mean there's not immediate impacts to our businesses. If you think of companies in America or around the globe, petroleum and natural gas matter is such a fundamental input to so many products. And the reality is, if you think, I touched on our chemical group, their input is generally a petroleum product. And the output is the various products they produce, obviously, that are byproducts of that. But their input costs have effectively doubled in a very short period of time. But again, we'll manage through that, and that's the beauty of being part of Berkshire. They know, first, we'll take care of our customer, we'll find the right answer, we'll manage the challenges, and the value creation will be there in the end. So there's some short-term pressure on our chemical businesses. If you looked at their first quarter profits individually, they would be down because or flat to down because they've got some challenges, for example, on the input side. But they're delivering what the customer needs, and that rebalances over a period of time where our prices will move up pursuant to our contracts. We'll be treated fairly in the end, in that they'll reset and then may unwind a little bit slower. But the point is, unfortunate situation, and we've got men of service and women of service over there and putting themselves at risk, and that in itself is scary because a lot of our employees have family involved. But as far as running our businesses, it's really heads down. We'll get through this, and we'll keep operating everything for the long run. And again, it includes how we'll operate our assets. We're not going to put the asset at risk to try to get to a short-term outcome because a petroleum price is higher, or petroleum prices are higher. It's very much continuing to take that long-term perspective. Katie, obviously, it can impact demand and what's being brought in on the coast. Are you seeing that, or what else are your observations?
Yeah, it's interesting, and Warren has said this in the past before. The railroad is a really good reflection of what's happening in the industrial and the consumer economies because our loadings really cut across all the various commodities. We touch agricultural products, we touch coal, the industrial commodities like cement and steel and aggregates. Certainly our intermodal business, which is such a big part of our business, reflects what's going on with the consumer. And so we're seeing the impact from the conflict in the Middle East in a couple of different ways. First of all, I would say that if you look across our various commodities, it's created an opportunity for some of those commodities just because of the disruption in the supply chain. In addition to that, we see commodities like aggregates and steel, things like that are favorable, and we're seeing an increase in those. But then some of the commodity areas that use energy in the manufacturing of those commodities are certainly being impacted by the increasing fuel prices. The largest segment of our business, as I mentioned, is intermodal. And so as fuel prices increase, our intermodal business becomes more competitive. And so we're seeing an increase there relative to what's happening in the Middle East. I would say in general, though, as we think about it, if fuel prices stay too high for too long, it has an impact on consumer demand. And when that happens, that cuts across all of our businesses.
And have you started to see that yet? That obviously when you think of, I touched on it being an input to many of our companies, but really globally it's an input to so many things. And as that price pressure moves up, obviously the demand side is challenged. Are you seeing that yet?
Yeah, we're seeing we are starting to see that impact some of the businesses. I would also say, Greg, as we talk to some of our large intermodal customers, what they are telling us, some of the big retailers are, the customers are having to make choices now. So as fuel prices go up, they make choices about what they're buying. And so that's where I get back to if it is a prolonged higher fuel price environment, I do believe that we will see that customer impact across our businesses.
Thank you. Adam, across your businesses, what are you seeing? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, when you see when you see the increases that have occurred in the instant spikes in some cases that occurred, certainly on the consumer product side, on the retail side, it has affected some of the demand on that side. I would also tell you that we have also faced multiple times at NetJets with $100 a gallon or $100 a barrel of pricing. We see those spikes. We see the demand. I haven't seen it on the NetJet side. We went from really the last 2 years from about $5 to $5.40 a gallon. We're seeing spikes up to $7 a gallon. I would tell you, if I see that kind of sitting at $7.25, $7.50 a gallon, then you'll see it start impacting even on the higher end side on the NetJet side. So we're feeling it. It's not the first time we've had to deal with this. We're prepared to deal with those things and make adjustments where we need to, but it certainly is affecting, I would say, some of the retail businesses and some of the consumer product businesses.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Becky, for the question. We'll now move to station 5.
Good afternoon. Manjap Singh from Mountain House, California. Warren has spoken very highly of both you, Greg, and Katie. So I'm grateful to have you both leading our company. And I'd like to ask each of you a question. Greg, as you know, the Berkshire system relies on decentralization. Each manager runs their own subsidiary. As CEO, which operating units do you think need more oversight, and how will you handle a manager who underperforms? And Katie, as Greg highlighted, BNSF's profitability lags its competitors. With eventual technology advancements in autonomous driving, trucking costs will continue to drop. How will BNSF maintain its competitive advantage from competitors and new technology?
Great. Thank you. So, associated with the letter I wrote to all of you as owners, I highlighted some important, as I've touched on, values. One of them was our decentralized model. I also touched on risk discipline, capital allocation. And when we think of our businesses, we have an exceptional group of leaders and businesses. And yes, they do own their businesses, as Katie touched on it in her video, as Adam's alluded to it and talked about it. There's a great deal of ownership in across each of our subsidiaries. And that's absolutely how we'll continue to operate and see it as an extremely effective model. They're closest to their customers. They understand what needs to be done. And if they think like an owner, we get very good outcomes across the group of companies. I would highlight, though, that with decentralized model, we do not take responsibility, and I was one of those. I ran BHE. It's a great set of responsibilities, or Berkshire Hathaway Energy, shouldn't be abbreviating, sorry. But when I ran it, that autonomy meant you embraced it, and there was a great amount of accountability that came with it, and sheer pride that you wanted to do things right. We've got a clear set of, when we talk about integrity and how I started it, we have a lot of expectations. And that's where both on the integrity, how they approach managing their business and servicing their customers. And I've said there's a lot of external factors we can observe. But our primary engagement is with are they managing the risk, and risk and foremost? Do they see themselves as that chief risk officer you've heard us discuss many times? Are they good allocators of capital with the capital they have there? Because even capital, you have to manage your operating expenses well. I view everything, that when we're spending money on it may be a capital expenditure, it can be an operating expenditure. You're deploying our shareholders' capital. Are we doing that well? And we focus on that. So that's part of that equation of allocation of capital. And the reality is, if we're seeing a situation where we're underperforming or we're seeing some potentially poor decisions, that's where we engage and have a discussion. And usually it's relative, and I touched a bit on this with Katie, it's relative to what we see externally. And just really trying to understand where our performance gaps are. And then it quickly moves to, and we don't have the people at corporate to go in and, quote, help. So it's not like we send in an army. But there's generally some people within our subsidiaries, or maybe someone we know, that could help them with that performance gap, because we do treasure continuous improvement and strongly, as you've heard, believe in operational excellence. And there's, as I've said, there's room for us to get better. And that's how we would approach the situations where we see the gap and need to close it. Katie, maybe you can probably touch on both.
Absolutely. So thank you for the question. And as I said, we absolutely know that it's critically important that we continue to drive an efficient operation, that we continue to have a competitive cost structure, and that we continue to close the gap with our competitor relative to our profitability. There's a couple of specific things that we're working on, and it's really about operationalizing the improvement that we saw in 2025 into the first quarter of 2026, and making sure that we're really institutionalizing that. So the first thing that we really focused on in 2025 was we knew that we needed to improve our single car operational efficiency. And when I say single car unit operational efficiency, we run a couple of different networks. We run our intermodal network, we run our agricultural and our coal network, our bulk networks, and then the balance of it is what we call our carload network, our single car network. And that's where we have non-unit train. It takes a lot of operational focus, it takes a lot of work effort, and it consumes a lot of resources. And so anything you do to improve that single car network is good for all of your customers. It frees up resources, it creates capacity, it allows you to handle the same amount of volume, if not more, with fewer assets. And that translates through then to the improvement that you're seeing in the profitability. An example of that is in the first quarter of this year, we handled more volume than we did in the first quarter of last year, but we did it with 260 fewer locomotives. That translates into a more consistent service product for our customers, and it also translates into better financial results, which is what you saw in the first quarter of 2026. So we're spending a lot of time ensuring that we have operational excellence, not in just all those other networks, but in the network that frees up resources and drives improvement and operational excellence for all of our customers. The second area, and you heard Greg talk about this earlier, was around our technological transformation. We really believe that in addition to driving that operational discipline that you saw in 2025 and into 2026, that working with the new BNSF Tech organization to drive that next step level of improvement. And so you saw units dwell in our terminals, less time that translated through to the financial results that I talked about. You saw velocity improve as well. And so how do we leverage technology then to take the next step level improvement? So I'm excited about what we're doing there. We're literally attracting data scientists, operations research folks, and we're putting them alongside of our operators in our network operations center. We're looking at things like digital twins, which gives us the opportunity to model how we run the railroad before we actually run the railroad. We're looking at opportunities to do predictive ETAs for our customers, which allows our customers to have a better product. It allows us to turn the assets faster. And then last, what I would say is that it's good old-fashioned going to work on attacking the largest structural cost buckets. We had a record for the first quarter in our fuel efficiency. That's the kind of thing we want to do because it makes us competitive with trucks, it is good for the environment, and it's good for our financials. So those are the things we're doing to close the gap relative to profitability. Now, your question about competing with trucks, I would say a couple of things with that. First of all, we have the largest intermodal franchise of all of the railroads. We have a unique relationship with J.B. Hunt, and we have been extremely successful in converting over-the-road freight. We've done more of that than anybody, so we know how to compete with trucks. But your question about technology is a good one. And I would say that we, in the past, have invested in a system called positive train control, which is a safety overlay that allows us to operate the railroad efficiently. As you know, we operate in a closed circuit, and so we have the ability, to your point, ultimately to run the train with fewer people than we operate with today. And in fact, if you go way back in time, we used to operate the trains with 5 people on the train. Now we're down to 2 people on most of our trains. So the technology will continue, just like most industries, will continue to evolve. And we're continuing to look at that as well. The last point I would say with that, though, is that we also have to be allowed to innovate. And so we need regulation that supports the ability for railroads to be able to compete with trucks. As you said, we know that there are trucks out there running today in our state in Texas along I-45. There was just a pilot with autonomous trucks. What we have to be able to do is to be able to compete with that and to be able to innovate. And so we're going to need regulations that allow the railroads to be able to do that. So that's how I think about competing, ensuring that we're closing the gap, as well as maintaining our competitive advantage with trucks.
Thank you, Katie. Adam, on that point, and Katie's point, you came, literally, Adam had left for a very brief stint 10 years ago, and had a very senior role in NetJets, and had effectively been recruited to be a CEO of another business that was going public, and we were fortunate enough to convince Adam to come back. But he came back to a challenging situation. The asset was underperforming. We had billions of dollars of debt, back to ourselves, to the parent company, but it was debt that had been incurred, and some real challenges. When you think about how we address underperformance and how do we get a business back on track, maybe you just want to touch on that period of time and that bringing the business back and how you achieve that.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I came back on June 1st of 2015, and that Monday afternoon, and many of the team that's up here today, we got in a room, and I asked a question about how many people really understand sort of the bookends of our business. NetJets is complicated. We're ad hoc, we're unscheduled, we fly to thousands of airports. Commercial airlines will fly to 50 to 100 airports. We fly to 150 countries around, so it's a very complicated business. And I asked a question to the team, how many people do you think really understand the bookends of our business? And I didn't like the answer. I won't tell you what the answer was, but it was too few. And it sort of started there. And what we did was we really said, to build this culture the way we want it, if I understand what you're doing, you understand what I'm doing at deeper and wider levels, we're going to do good things together. So it sort of started on that Monday afternoon, and when we started building that back. I will tell you, it was also a reinforcement probably from Greg. I remember my first board meeting prep, and I was excited, and we were starting to kind of move, and I was talking about growth, and we're going to get this right, we're going to grow. And Greg pulled me aside in a very kind way, and he said, why don't you pay $1 back to Warren and work on getting your debt down? That was a teaching lesson. I took that to heart. I heard it clearly, and I actually already knew that. And so we just started really putting our blinders on, and we said safety and service, safety and service. Warren bought NetJets after becoming a customer in 1995, bought NetJets in 1998, and he did a video for us that we still use, and he said, I want safety and I want service. And we've been really focused on making sure everybody stays in that alleyway. That, in large part, plus a lot of hard work, is why we're able to pay our debt back. We're able to pay cash back to Berkshire Hathaway and move our way, as I said in the video, out of the other column and be first in the service business, and I'm proud of that. So
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Katie. Becky?
Okay, this comes from Brian Simpkins in San Diego, California. The question is, has Berkshire Hathaway considered seeking any tariff relief or reimbursement programs for its wholly owned operating businesses exposed to import costs, and how significant is that impact across the portfolio?
Let me start with the impact across our portfolio, because it's very close to discussing the situation in the Middle East, in that, yes, there was the tariffs, and each business may have fallen under a different tariff or what they were importing, and we'd gone through it once already in the first term of the administration, and there were lessons learned there, so we were both better prepared in how to manage through it, and had realigned a certain amount of our inputs. So that was valuable. The second thing was, it's as I described with the conflict. It was heads down, and we'll just manage ourselves through it. Listen, there's some cost pressures here. We'll figure out how we're going to continue to serve the customer. We'll work through on delivering what they need, and there has to be some reasonable expectations on the other side that we'd recover those tariffs through the either through a direct contract with them or through the product we're creating, and that was a good approach, in that we just held our course and wanted to continue to service them. So yes, there is financial impacts, but our team did a really remarkable job of addressing it and really minimizing the impact to any of our businesses. As far as recovering it, that would definitely be at our operating level. They would be making such a decision. But overall, right now, our perspective has been there's a lot to sort out when it comes to refunds, what we're eligible for, and so at this point in time, we're very much taking an approach that if it's appropriate, our teams will evaluate it, and again, it'll be a discussion with our customers and with a number of them. So it's an operating subsidiary decision, but we're not naive to it, in that we're encouraging them. There's a lot to be sorted out at this moment in time, and we're not pursuing them. That doesn't mean we may not have a subsidiary, and I'll look to our team on stage here that may be pursuing one or seeking one. Katie, anything on?
Not as far as the reimbursement, but I would say just as far as the impact of the tariffs and what we're seeing with our customers. I would say that in early 2025, we saw several of our customers pulling forward shipments in advance of the tariffs. And, we certainly saw our volumes ramp up at the beginning of 2025 because people were trying to get ahead of the implementation of the tariffs. So we did see, an increase in volumes through early 2025. That really stabilized then in the back part of 2025. And then into 2026, I would say that our customers have really adapted to the tariffs and adjusted to the tariffs. With that said, it does cause some uncertainty. And I think where we see that really showing up is, it's very difficult for our customers from a planning perspective. And I think it's keeping some capital on the sidelines as far as investment in manufacturing facilities. And it's just really the uncertainty of the tariffs that really is what we're seeing reflected with our customers.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, I would echo both those points. One, I would probably use, Berkshire Hathaway Automotive, Jeff Rocker, who is an excellent, CEO of that division. The new and used sales are, slightly down in Q1 of this year compared to last year, and part of that is sort of that same effect from the tariff buying that occurred a year ago to today. I had to smile because we were collecting. Okay, it's changed every day, as we know, and you manage through that. And just understanding the tariff bouncing ball was, a job in itself. But I had to smile because I was actually calling our CEOs just to get their take on it. And the 32 companies in the portfolio, consumer products, services, and retail, it's a stat that I love. They've actually been around on average 88 years. and only 0.5% of American businesses have been around more than 80 years. Our average in that sector from a founding standpoint is 88 years, and several of the, 5 of the companies specifically, companies that were founded in the 1800s. And when I called those CEOs, they said, we've been dealing with tariffs for 100 years, you know, kind of thing. And so not being dismissive at all of tariffs. The point is, I look at the whole tariff conversation as you're always going to have a curveball. If I think of the CEOs in the last 7, 8 years, we've had to deal with a global pandemic, the highest inflation 40 years, and now this thing, the bouncing ball of tariffs. So the businesses have done an excellent job of managing through that. I wouldn't put it in the fun department of the things we have to deal with, but we're learning it. And I think we're in a pretty decent spot moving forward. So,
Thank you, Adam. We'll move to station 6.
Good afternoon. My name is Amir Rehani from Vancouver, Canada. Thank you for hosting us, and thanks to everyone at headquarters that makes this weekend possible. Berkshire's investments in the 5 Japanese trading houses was passive. Good businesses at good prices, financed by cheap yen. Your Tokyo Marine deal is fundamentally different. A 10-year joint M&A and reinsurance partnership. That's a level of operational integration Berkshire has never done internationally. What does that look like in practice, and does it signal a broader shift toward active international partnerships under your leadership? And to put you on the spot, Greg, Canada versus USA in hockey, who are you cheering for? Sorry.
Now I'm in trouble. Ajit did an exceptional job of discussing Tokyo Marine, and I'll touch on it. But I teed it up a bit in saying it is a strategic relationship less than a financial transaction. Yes, we like the 2.5% investment into Tokyo Marine, and that will be a long-term investment. It's the type of investment we put with our other 5 investments in Japan. We really think of those as forever because it goes beyond the investment, and it's very much around the relationships we want to build there. And you'll continue to see that. Ajit expanded on the underwriting opportunity that we do jointly participate in their risk and rewards associated with effectively also 2.5% of their book there now. And that's, again, part of the financial transaction, but there's also a great deal of faith there. We, as Ajit said, and really Ajit says, and I take his word for that, but it's it's an exceptional company, and their performance has been remarkable. So we're thrilled to have them. And then the third thing that was touched on was the partnership highlighted a variety of things how we would like the relationship to develop, and that's not defined yet. So we'll continue to let that take its proper form. They're the type of partner that has the same culture, same values as us. So there's a little question. It's going to be exceptional for many years to come. But as far as pursuing an absolute acquisition in insurance or something like that, that'll evolve with time, and that would be obviously the discussions Ajit and the senior team at Tokyo Marine would be having. And if such an opportunity materializes, we'd be thrilled with it. Now to the really tough question. Canada versus U.S. in hockey. I did find a way, and it can cause a lot of angst in my own family. So I remember waking up that morning and Canada was playing the men, but I'd already decided a little bit earlier that when it came to the Canadian men versus the U.S. men, Connor McDavid plays for Edmonton. And therefore, I was going to cheer, because being from Edmonton, I would cheer for the Canadian men's team. And I've always followed the U.S. women, and I love what a program the U.S. hockey, and I love USA Hockey and how they approach the coaching and the development of the youth. And I think they've done a great job there. So I chose to cheer for the U.S. women, and it was the perfect outcome for me. So a little selfish in finding that type of outcome.
I will say, Greg and I had an Oilers Stars bet last year.
Yes, true.
And the losing person had to wear the jersey of the other, and I now own Oilers gear.
Yeah, Katie owns some Oilers jersey. And unfortunately this year, neither of us get to have that bet. They're both on the sidelines very quickly. But thank you for that question. Becky?
This question comes from a shareholder who didn't want to be identified, but it's a variation of a question that I got from several shareholders. Is there any future circumstance that you could envision Berkshire divesting businesses or being broken up? If so, what are those circumstances? The shareholder also writes, note, I don't want this to happen, but it's commonly discussed among followers of the company.
Yes. So when we think of the question, and I think it's a good one, because we've always highlighted there's certain circumstances that we may not be the best owner of a business. We've touched on if there's labor issues that we cannot resolve. I would take it to the point then further in my letter I touched on if there's reputational risks that we're not willing to ever have our owners or shareholders or Berkshire experience, and that we have to, maybe the business has evolved, the customers have evolved, but if there's that type of situation, then that company does not belong in the Berkshire family, and it may be a fine business that can be owned by someone else, but it may mean we don't own it. I would then take it a little bit further. I touched on a couple things, or one other thing before I jump to that would be, we've often talked that if we have a business that is unsustainable and no longer generating operating cash for our shareholders, we have to make some serious decisions around that. If there's someone else who could operate it and make it be more successful, both for the customer and for our employees, then we have to consider that. Otherwise, that business is unfortunately in a place where we can't just fund it and experience losses. We would wind it down over a period of time, but we'd look for a better solution for our customers and employees. So that's always been the case. Well, that at least from my perspective, has always been the case, and how we'll continue to do it. I would say we take the obligation and making sure our capital is properly deployed, obviously, very seriously. I touched on the regulatory compacted energy, and that has to exist, and we have to be, if we have capital deployed there, we have to get a fair return. We have a situation where we've actually announced we're selling a portion of Pacific Corp, our Washington State utility. And that's really a function of the fact that we have a multi-state process in Pacific Corp. There's 6 different states, and each customer is impacted in different ways. And I've already said we very much focus on what's the needs of each state and how can we best service them. And unfortunately, we were in a situation in Washington where they clearly had policy that they wanted from Pacific Corp, and it was having a significant impact on the costs of our other states. And as much as we would have liked to see what we call a multi-state compact, i.e., how do they balance all that, it wasn't occurring. And our other states were bearing costs that they felt were not theirs, that were being imposed by another state. So we consciously said, this isn't working for the 6 states. And the one state who had very specific policies and wanted them implemented, we chose to exit. We found a very good purchaser who very much supported and could implement what was required at that state. So there we have evolved, and it's a situation where it just didn't make sense for Berkshire to be an owner of that asset, or our owners to be an owner of that asset. And it'll be, I believe, a better outcome for the state and for their customers. So there are those situations where we would we would divest. And we will always approach things that when we buy something, it's forever. When we acquire a utility, we tell the regulators it's forever, but it has to be a relationship that works. And if it's broken, we'll find a better path, both for the company, the employees, customers, and obviously for Berkshire. Yep. Kate, yep.
Greg, there's a second part of that question, though, that gets at,
Please.
Is there a point where some of the parts or something, is there a point where it doesn't make sense for Berkshire to be a conglomerate, where you would break up the company?
Yeah. So to the second part of the question, absolutely not. I touched on it early. We are a conglomerate, but we are an efficient conglomerate. We don't have layers of management. We don't have a bunch of committees telling our businesses how to run, how they're going to, manage their customer relationships. We try to, the odd time, create frameworks so there's value shared across the businesses, so they're aware of what our other businesses are doing, and technologies. That's one of them. We like our framework now. We think it's very effective across 3 of our businesses. So of course we want them to understand it. But we don't create layers. I remember when Adam took on the role, I nicely said, there'll be no corporate group supporting you, either in Omaha or amongst your own team. He's got folks in NetJets, and they'll always step up and take more responsibility, including when I was in that role or in the vice chairman role. But the one thing we don't do is create layers of bureaucracy or other decision trees around it. And I think so many conglomerates end up with layers and layers of costs that don't add value to the overall corporation. I'm even careful when I talk about our metals group and our chemicals group, because they're a group in call it maybe in my vision, i.e. I see similar opportunities. I want them to work together. But they don't have a corporate group on top of them or anybody directing them on what to do. They find ways to work together because they have can have the same challenges, can have the same customers. So we see our conglomerate structure working without the bureaucracy and bloated costs. We see a great opportunity to continue to move capital across those different groups in a very tax efficient way. Other people can't say, I want to move capital. BNSF's a great example. Yes, they have a strong operating results, and they're in a cycle in their business cycle right now where there's a certain amount of capital we have to deploy into it, but we also receive substantial dividends from BNSF on an annual basis. We can take that capital and decide, is it needed in a different operating business, or do we see opportunities in equities? And if we don't see those opportunities, we're happy to, not happy, but we understand the logical home right now is U.S. Treasuries. We think that's a good asset. We prefer to see that deployed in a different fashion, yes, when the opportunity presents itself. But it allows us to really move that capital across the group. So I actually, the answer to the conglomerate is, yes, we understand we're one. We see it operates very effectively, and we do not see ourselves divesting of subsidiaries for that reason or ever breaking off a group. Thank you. Okay, station 7.
Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Hi, Greg, Katie, and Adam. My name is Bori Wang. I'm here from Chengdu, China. On behalf of myself and my investment partner, Xu Qi, thank you very much for this opportunity. And congratulations, Greg, on surviving your first year as CEO.
Thank you.
I'm sure the seat feels a bit warmer than it used to be. As you lead Berkshire into this new chapter, what would you say is the most significant evolution in your personal framework for assessing cash flow certainty and margin of safety compared to Warren's? And specifically, are you more inclined towards technology companies that exhibits the same robust cash flows? Thank you for continuing the legacy of Mr. Warren Buffett and Mr. Charlie Munger.
Thank you. So I think I'll start with the important part of that question. I mean, as far as how Warren thought about it, how Berkshire thought around approaching investments, quote, our margin of safety around investments and how we approach it, we're absolutely aligned there. And that starts with our culture and values and how we've approached everything over the years. So if I go back to looking at opportunities in energy, and it may have been an acquisition or we're deploying significant capital, it quickly went to, yes, we understood the opportunity, but Warren, and I'd want to have this conversation, where's the risk? And do we really understand the risk associated with this? And I have a really great example is that we were acquiring NV Energy in the, had the opportunity to acquire it, and Warren was actually coming back from China and had been over there, and I was waiting for him to arrive and land in Seattle and give him an update that we had this potential opportunity. And I very much knew the opportunity and what the value proposition was. I'd clearly had 3 significant risks in my mind that was anxious to discuss with Warren. And Warren landed, and I had a short presentation, so I'm asking him to just give me a call. It was literally 1 page, but just to really trigger it, could we have this conversation? And the immediate conversation we had was, yeah, the economics, you couldn't agree more, understood them, went right to the biggest risk. And I was just getting ready to walk him through the 2 or 3 risks I'd seen and want to make sure we understood it and were comfortable and wanted his input. And the risk was fundamentally rooftop solar and how would it disrupt that business and disrupt our customer. We discussed it. We understood it was a challenge. I remember saying to Warren, well, that's part of the reason I'm sure we have this opportunity to acquire this public company, that there is a certain amount of risk, and the public and the board and the management team had decided that they didn't see the same opportunity we did. But Warren went right to it, and it was all around the risk. And that risk did surface 12 months later, 18 months. We managed our way through it. Our team did a great job. But so I don't see there being incremental margins, or we think of risk differently. We think of them as in the Berkshire mindset that we're going to understand the economic prospects of this opportunity. And as I said, we really go to that 10-year window potentially and say, what's the business look like 10 years from now? And is there enough safety margin 10 years from now? Is what we see at the outcome, do we see an outcome? And if we don't understand what that looks like 10 years from now, I know Warren would say this, I would say it, then we don't do it. There's no safety margin, or maybe we can adjust some numbers, or there'll be synergies or something of that. Like, we have to have a vision of what that's going to feel like and look like. And that really is how we approach it. Now, touching on technology companies, we're not going to ever say, geez, this is a specific sector for us, or we need to be in it. If there's something in the technology sector or in that group of companies, and we understand one of those companies, to understand, again, what their opportunities are and what we view as the economic prospects for it, and we have an understanding of what those risks are, that doesn't preclude us just because it's in a technology sector or that. But it would start with back to the fundamentals of, do we understand it? Do we both the opportunities and the risks, and then is it fairly valued relative to that? And that's always going to be the approach. So thank you for your excellent question. Now, Becky, if this is okay, we're going to, and so please pick your toughest question, but we're beyond 1 o'clock now. This will be our last question for today. So we look forward to it, and then I'll have some conclusionary thoughts and comments. But thank you, Becky.
This question comes from Joseph Matyas, and he said, Warren had Charlie's partnership for most of his tenure as CEO, which naturally reduced the risk of subpar investment decisions. Who will serve as the Charlie for Greg?
And they're a reason why they're in the rafters together. That was an incredible partnership, and one that you can't replicate. But what I would start with is that very fortunate to still have Warren as our chairman, and that's very important, and it makes for an excellent transition. Have an exceptional board of directors that I'm comfortable reaching out to any of them individually, depending on the circumstances and either the risk we're dealing with or an opportunity that may be present in any of our businesses or one that may be coming our way. So we're fortunate to have that exceptional group in place. And then it really comes back to our team that's in place. And I said this when I was answering to Warren from Omaha, that we want Berkshire to endure. And that means, yes, I want to lead Berkshire and I'll be a strong leader. I strongly believe that, and I'll take Berkshire forward. But it will be you always need a single leader, and I think we strongly understand that. But you surround yourself with great people, and they're already here. I've been fortunate on the non-insurance operation to operate with Adam's 32 and the 18 that I still get to interact with a lot. Those 50, including Adam and Katie, obviously have an exceptional working relationship with Ajit, and fortunate with that, and would seek counsel regularly. Even as vice chairmen, we would constantly have a conversation around, he may be making an insurance decision, or I was making a decision around one of our non-operating businesses. And the first thing we'd cross-check is, how does it impact your group? So have an amazing relationship and someone I immensely value the input. And then across our CEOs, we're so fortunate to have a great group that I would reach out to any of them on a specific circumstance and ask them for their input. And I generally know where they've dealt with a challenge or a significant opportunity, and I'd be the first to seek it out and say, let's talk about it and figure out our path forward. And it may be that it was someone on their team that really dealt with it, and then I'd want to be talking to their team. So fortunately, because of Berkshire and the way we're created, again, it is a unique structure, but we have an immense amount of resources around us. And then we have our team in Omaha who has supported Warren for all those years. They're remarkable folks. There's not a lot of them, but they are good, and they're exceptional, and we're fortunate to have them as part of the team. So it will be such that Berkshire endures and will endure as a team, but clearly with leadership. So thank you, Becky, for that last question. Thank you. So as we wrap up today, obviously, I can't help but thank everyone for joining us this morning and early afternoon, both as our long-term shareholders or those that are newer shareholders, and all of you that came for the experience. It's greatly appreciated. We enjoy this engagement. It all comes together because there's an individual Warren is highlighted in the past, pulls together the exhibit hall, pulls together everything here. I'd like to acknowledge her, Melissa Shapiro. Thank you. And then the light was over on that table, but we do have, and we made this announcement in December, our long-standing CFO, Mark Hamburg, is retiring in June of this year. We're very fortunate that then he will stay on for an incremental year as an advisor to our incoming CFO, as a personal friend, advisor to myself. We will have Mark's knowledge, resource, and it's immense when it comes to Berkshire. I like to, yes. Mark has been our CFO for 34 years. Not this June, the following June when he truly retires, it'll be 40 years with Berkshire, and it's been such an incredible career. And has worn he wears so many hats in this organization. I mean, he's helping Melissa. Melissa's organizing it, doing all, but when she has a question, she went to Mark to look for the answer around, be at the annual meeting. He's our corporate secretary. I like to say, and to replace Mark, we hired a CFO, but we also hired a general counsel. It took two to replace him, and more than that. So, Mark, thank you for your incredible contributions to Berkshire. Warren has highlighted those, and I can only echo all that. Thank you so much. Now, lastly, again, thank you for this remarkable experience for all of us at Berkshire. We treasure what we call Owners Day, that opportunity to communicate around what's going on in Berkshire, because we're so proud of it, absolutely committed to it, and passionately believe in Berkshire. But equally, the engagement of all you throughout the day, yesterday into this afternoon, just greatly appreciated. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you next May. Thank you.